Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start the meeting in a minute. Sure. I don't know if it works. Welcome to PCE. I'm John Hardwick. This is the note well. Please read the note well. Any submission that you make, any statement that you make today at the microphone or in writing on the mailing list is an IETF contribution. All contributions are subject to the rules of RSC 5378 and RSC 8179. If you want to read the note well more closely, then you can go find the copy online. Before we start the session, a few points of admin. Please sign the blue sheets that are being passed around. Am I quiet? It's because I'm sleepy. I'll get closer. Is this better? Yeah? All right. Please sign the blue sheets. They're being passed around. We have a minute taker. Drew is going to take the minutes, but he would like some help. Please could you, if you're not checking email, please could you go check the Etherpad online for the PCE session and help Drew with the minutes. All contributions are very gratefully received. Is anybody in the Jabber room that could act as a Jabber scribe? Adrian, thank you very much. So we are streaming the audio and video. I see that that's not in vain because we do have some people in the Meet Echo room. So please only speak to the meeting using the microphones in the room. Please state your name before you speak so that the minute taker can record your name. And presenters, if you're presenting, please could you keep your feet inside this small pink square on the floor so that the people who are remote can see you. And yeah, as you can see, there's only one chair today. My co-chair, Julien, unfortunately couldn't travel to Singapore this time, so he sends his apologies. He threatened that he may turn up later in the Meet Echo room, so you may hear his ghostly, disembodied voice. But it looks like he's not there yet. I guess it's still a little early in France. The usual reminder for everyone, please to use the mailing list and use it actively. And if you have any discussions you want to have, please have them on the list. If you're making any changes to a working group draft, then it would be great to discuss those on the list. That's not always the case, but if you are making changes, it would be great to at least send an email to the list and tell us what's happened in your draft. We're actually getting a lot better at that in the working group. It's really pleasing to see that a lot of people are now doing that. I heartily encourage that. Please keep doing it. If you have a new draft, please introduce it on the mailing list. It would be a lot easier to get some time in the meeting if you first socialize the draft online. And that's about it. So on to the agenda. This is the agenda. You have me to tell you about working group status for the next 20 minutes. Then we have one slot to discuss the working group draft on stateful PCE for point to multipoint. Then we move on to a new submission for PCE extensions for SR for leveraging the IPv6 SR data plane, segment routing data plane. And then finally, we will go on with 4 drafts which we have previously discussed to get an update and find out what the next action is for the various drafts here. The association type of path protection, I should say, not projection. The association type for bidirectional LSPs, PCEP for supporting resource sharing applications, and synchronization between stateful PCEs. Do we have anyone who wants to bash the agenda? Any comments? Everyone's happy. Good. Okay, so let's take a tour of our working group drafts. So we'll start off with a slide that I have wanted to present for a very long time. After 5 years and 7 months, we have finally published the stateful PCE as an RFC. And thank you everyone for your contributions and patience as we got that draft through the working group and out the other side, and through the ISG and out the other side. Now we have RFC 8231. That's good news for pretty much every other draft we have going in the working group, because they were all depending normatively on it. So it's really good to have that out there. And with it dropped out a slew of other things. The LSP state synchronization, which was kind of a companion document to that. And PCEP extension for service-aware LSPs was also dependent on stateful PCE. And there's kind of a double whammy, because another really important draft also got to RFC in this period. PCEP-S, so PCEP over TLS, securing PCEP. It's really good to see that get published, and I hope that everyone's implementing that. Further to that, we have 3 drafts currently in the RFC editor's queue. We have the stateful PCE for LSP initiation, which is being edited right now. We have the Intel Air extensions, which depends on it, and we also have the BIS draft for RFC 6006, that's stateless PCE for point to multipoint, all 3 sitting in the RFC editor queue. So I expect those to drop out as RFCs very soon. Just about 45 minutes ago, I submitted another draft to the IESG, so that's the draft for experimental code points. See, Deborah's arrived, so Deborah, that's with you now. Please do your magic and let's get that one moving. A few administrative items. We have a new errata embarrassingly, on the RFC we just published about a few weeks ago. It was a wrong reference. It was actually an indirect reference to a crypto algorithm. It was a reference to a document which referenced the document which defined the crypto algorithm. So we need to correct that reference. We're going to correct it in the errata. The authors have confirmed that there's no technical impact, so there's no impediment to implementing the draft. It was simply fixing a reference. We also did some early code point allocations for the association group draft. We're hoping to get that draft published quite soon, but in the meantime, we needed to get code points in place so that, because there are implementations that people want to start building networks or building some sort of network with. So we allocated some new code points for that draft. They're now listed on the IONA website, so you can find them there. Quick tour of the drafts that are still with the working group. So the first one, the draft for inter-area and inter-AS applicability. So the status of that is there was a Shepherd review. That went back with comments for the authors to update. Are there any authors here today? No? Okay, well, what I heard, and the word on the street, is that the authors are considering whether the scope of this draft is right, considering they started writing it when I was still at school, and now we have Stapled PCE and the world has changed. They may need to update the draft with those new requirements. So it's with them to consider that. I'm not going to force them to do it, but if they want to do it, then great. I'll be very happy. If they do that, then it's going to go back to the working group, and we'll have to review it again, and that's as it should be. So we'll wait and see what happens. We have several drafts here, which had gone through the working group last call, and they're basically waiting for bandwidth for the document shepherds to ship them on up to the IESG. The first one is the LSP setup type, where actually it's waiting for me to make an update to the draft. It's an update we've agreed, so it should be done very soon, and then hopefully it will just be shepherded on. The next two relate to GMPLS, where Julian tells me he's something like 80% of the way through writing up a shepherd report for GMPLS extensions, and I hope that he'll be another 20% of the way through that before we get to the next IETF meeting, and we'll have removed this from the list. The WSON RWA draft is ready to go. Danny Ellis shepherded that a long time ago. It's just blocked on GMPLS. We're going to move those two forward together. We have about 5 drafts here that are pretty much telling me that they're ready for last call. Segment routing, which is basically a follow-on from the LSP setup type. That will go when the LSP setup type is ready. Hierarchy extensions, where I think the draft has expired. I think that's just down to the draft being dormant while they wait for the publishing process. Is anyone here who's an author of hierarchy want to make any comments about that? I guess not. Okay, well, I'll chase the authors offline and make sure it gets refreshed because we can't do a last call on an expired draft. The next one is PC Association Group, where we've just completed the early allocation, but a lot of work is depending on that. The document seems stable. We're going to push that through to last call shortly after the meeting. Stapled PCE auto bandwidth, again, has been around for a while, is stable. The office is saying it's ready, and Stapled PCE point to multipoint, which we'll be hearing about in a few minutes' time. So they should all be getting ready for last call. So things are moving on pretty well at that end of the working group. A few working group drafts were not on the agenda for today. First of all, the Yang model. Drew, do you want to say anything about the status of the Yang model?
Dhruv from Huawei. So regarding the Yang model, basically from our side, more or less things are stable, and we have not made much change from since we presented in IETF 99. And we asked a few clarification questions to the Yang doctors, so we have got some replies, but we have not yet updated those. So that's one action point on us. So we will mostly be updating, and then our waiting game for the T tunnel and the other documents that we are referencing. So the waiting game will happen for them to get published, and then we can take up the piece of Yang.
So you think we need to wait for those other drafts before we can move this one on?
Yes, because I think that's the Yang publication process. Anything that you are importing does need to be published before it.
Yeah, we can't be published before they're published, but
Yeah.
we could be at the same time.
Yeah.
We don't have to sort of sit and wait for an RSC number before we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, at least we can think of getting Yang doctors and other things done at the same time as the T-tunnel models are
Yeah.
getting ready. Yeah.
Okay, there are a couple of drafts here which are related to the ACTN work from T's working group, stateful hierarchical PCE and the applicability statement. Dhruv, any updates on those drafts?
Yeah, Dhruv again. Basically, we kind of refreshed the documents based on the changes that were done in the ACTN framework as those documents are getting ready for last call and Ts. So we have just kept them aligned to the changes there. Other than that, not much changes we are expecting in the document as of now.
Okay, good. So there's PC association diversity. Anyone want to speak to that one?
So I think we addressed the comments that we received a couple of time ago in the latest version. From my point of view, there is one element that we added that are not completely happy with, so maybe we need more discussion on it. Otherwise, I think the main point of the main architecture of the draft is okay. It's just this small point to address.
Okay. Policy association draft.
Okay. For the policy, it's almost the same, so it's clearly stable. There is maybe one thing that we need to discuss, just to add maybe a new TLV, sub-TLV to add the possibility of having variables to the policy. This is something that we need to discuss.
Okay. And two drafts related to stateful PCE, one the GMPLS extensions for stateful PCE and the other stateful PCE LSP scheduling, where honestly I'm not sure what the status of these is. They seem to have been dormant. I'm not sure if that's because they're finished or if that's because people aren't working on them. Dhruv?
Dhruv, regarding the scheduling, I think we did make an update just before the IETF, and basically to keep it aligned with the T's document as well as it's getting progress there. There were a few other changes we wanted to also align to the way the RFC 8231 tells us to do a few things, and the state synchronization draft that is also on the agenda today. So basically keeping the extensions aligned to the rest of the PC working group documents. So that's the major update from the scheduling.
Okay, so does that mean it's sort of just staying alive while it waits for other things, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, basically more reviews. That
More
would be
reviews.
the next step here.
Okay. Some of our drafts are expired, as we've noted. Some of them are expired just because they're moving slowly for various reasons, and that's okay. We just need to get them alive again so we can take the next step. There are two where the chairs are wondering if there's still an editor in charge or if the draft is now headless. There's remote initiated GMPLS LSP. Is anyone working on that? I think it was Zafar, but I haven't seen Zafar for a while or heard from him. He's here. Yeah, okay. He's in Singapore. Okay, well maybe I'll try to track him down.
Yes, Zafar is Singapore. I think he'll be joining soon. I'll just ping him.
Oh, okay, that would be good. Yeah. So I can talk to Zafar, see if he's still going on that. I think on the enhanced errors, that draft was live a long time ago, and then it died because no one was working on it, and then Jian from Huawei took it over, but I think Jian from Huawei has also stepped away, so I think that this one's now again dormant. So I'll say the same thing I said last time. If anyone is interested in this work, then let me know. Hamianis? Okay. So Hao Mian says he would like to take this over, which is fine. Are you able to contact Zhang and yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks, that's the end of the working group status. Any questions on any of that? In which case the first presenter is, I think, Pavan, for the point to multi-point stateful PCE.
My name is Pawan Biram. I'll be giving a brief update on the progress of the stateful PCE for P2P, P2MP LSP's draft. Okay. There's been one revision published for this since the last IETF. This revision contains some minor editorial changes to get ourselves aligned with the progress of the three documents listed on the slide. At this point, the document is fairly stable. There are no open issues. We believe it's ready to progress to the next stage. So we'd like to request the working group and the chairs to consider this for last call.
Okay, so this draft has been around for quite a few cycles. It's been stable for a long time. I haven't seen too many reviews of it. Happy to proceed to a last call. It would be great to see a few reviews during last call, because my main concern is there haven't been enough pairs of eyes on it. So, I mean, obviously we try to do a careful shepherd review, but that's no substitute for multiple pairs of eyes. So I'll proceed to the last call, and I will hope and pray that people do review that. Okay.
So actually, Zafar gave the status on Jabber. Can I just share?
Please share it.
He said that it's ready for last call, and it is stable mainly, but he will need a refresh that he'll do tonight.
Yeah, because I think it's the draft expired quite a long time ago. So yeah, it'll be good to see a refresh first, and then we'll do get a refresh, and then maybe get someone to review that, and then we'll maybe think about a last call after that.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. So the comments there were relating to the stateful PCE for remote initiated LSPs. Okay, so now it's, I think, Dhruv. Those are the wrong slides. There you go.
Hello, yeah, this is Dhruv. I'm presenting a PSAP extension for SRv6. So there are a bunch of other SRv6 documents that you are seeing in the IETF today. So within the PSAP, we wanted to see what changes we need to make to support it and whether it's a good idea or not as well. So what we are basically doing here, we know that SR basically allows you to steer packets through both IPv6 and MPLS and use the same source routing paradigm. Only the data plane is different. One uses MPLS stack, other use an IPv6 header extension. That's the basic difference. So the question that we have is, should PCE be able to compute SR path for both IPv6 and MPLS forwarding plane? And if it can PSAP be used as a protocol to transfer that information from the PCE to the head node where who's steering the traffic? So these are the two questions that are the most important questions for the working group before we can jump into how we do it, right? So from the author's point of view, we kind of see like what would this extension look like if we try to do it. Basically, in case of SRv6, the difference is that instead of an MPLS label, we will be using an IPv6 address to identify a particular segment. And just an ordered list of IPv6 address is, instead of a label stack, you have an ordered list of IPv6 address in this case. So we already have PCE segment routing draft, which focuses on MPLS data plane. If we extend the same extension, what are the changes that we would need to do to support IPv6 data plane? So we kind of realized that main changes would be that we already have an SR-ERO and SR-RRO subobject that we used for segment routing. A few changes needs to be made to that to support SRv6. We have capability negotiation as a part of segment routing. Maybe we need to separate it out, and since the parameters are different, that one is more focused on the MPLS and MSD kind of stack depth and those things. And here we have different parameters. Maybe doing it separately would be a good idea. And also, since we have the setup type, maybe we could use the setup type also as a way to signal that this is an IPv6 data plane. So this was at the high level what we thought would the extension would look like. Messages, I don't think so we need to make any change to our messages. Request, reply, report, all works fine. They all use ERO. The only difference would be that we need to use an updated SR-ERO subobject and an updated SR-RRO subobject to carry the IPv6 data plane path. So a quick look. On the top is the capability. So in the capability, the TLV itself can specify whether the PCC or PCE supports the SRv6, and the max SL can also notify what is the maximum the segment IPv6 segment header length that can be used. And this is quite different from MSD, so it's better to have it in a separate TLV. As I said, path setup type, the second one, and this is the updated SR-ERO subobject compared to the one that is there in the segment routing draft. The most of the top things remains the same. And if you remember there, you had an SID followed by NAI, which is network and node or adjacency identifier. So we kind of updated that to also include the SRv6 identifier. And inside the SRv6 identifier, you have the SRv6 ID, which is a 128-bit IPv6 address, and some other information about this SID, what function this SID has, some flags, and what type it is. And this type can further use the NAI that we already have to identify that this SID belongs to which node or which adjacency, etc. So the idea is to keep it aligned to the SR-ERO, SR-RRO that already exist, just update with the SRv6 identifier and the function code and some other informations that will help us achieve the v6 requirements as well. So first, I think to the working group, first question would be that with this draft, we are making sure that the PC and PCEP can be used for both modes of segment routing. So we need to decide as a working group that whether this is a good idea, whether we should continue to use PCEP even for SRv6. And if we do it in that way, is this extension what we are proposing? Does it make sense or not? So any comments?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Like Jeff said, it seems fairly obvious to do this. I had a couple of thoughts reading the draft. One was just to make you aware, the LSP setup type draft is changing. So there will be a new idiom for you to follow in this draft once that change is done. I think the capability TLV in the open message is moving to a sub TLV from a top level TLV. So why don't you wait until I get the LSP setup type draft out, and then we you can do the update.
No problem.
I noticed buried in the text that you have a dependency on the segment routing draft, which doesn't specify something which I can't remember what it is, but if you could put that on the mailing list, then we can make sure it gets done.
Sure. It's too far.
So I assume the setup type is going to be ready within a few weeks, right?
Sorry, Jeff.
The update on setup type.
Yeah, that will be done soon, and it will have an effect on Drew's draft.
Yes. So with regards to dependencies, keep it simple. If you start looking into programmability draft and all the combinations, you'll just wait forever.
Okay.
Just keep it straight to pass provision. Same we did with MPLS.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We'll make sure that it can be extended in future when that happens. Right now, we can keep it simple. Yeah.
Good.
I think next is also me.
Okay. Next is Drew again.
So this is path protection and generic PSEP association. When I wrote the slides, I thought that I had to convince the working group that association needs to be moved. Luckily, John has already put in his chair's slide that he wants association to be moved soon. So few of the slides we can kind of move a little quickly. My work is already done there. But just to keep people up to date on what's the changes that we have done. Main changes, since we wanted to publish an early INA allocation, so we make sure that's completely clean and it's taken care of. So luckily that's done. Thank you, chairs and AD. And some of the implementations are already started using the early allocated code point. And one more thing, we wanted to kind of show that currently this association draft is being used in multiple documents, and it's important that we kind of keep things aligned and make sure that what is there in the base draft it's according to the base draft in other documents. And good thing what has happened is that we have got a lot of feedback from policy diversity, and we had in the last set of revisions taken those considerations, and that's why we kind of made an update with the operator configured and dynamic association. So luckily we have had a good back and forth between the various association types and the generic association, this thing. So things are going well. Overall, we have 2 working group documents, 3 other documents are on the agenda, including this one that I'm going to start talking about very soon. And then we have some other documents as well, which have been published as well as presented in the some other IETF. So there is a good set of documents based on association. So to the main topic, path protection. So path protection, in fact, was one of the first association type that was published. In fact, this was the type when the authors, I was not part of the team back then, and when the authors were considering path protection, that's the time they realized that we may need to do a generic association so that we don't have every different use case trying to do this in a different way. So we went back and said that let's write a generic association object and make the path protection as a separate document where the association object is defined there, and this document just defines a new association type called protection, right? So this document, in fact, has been there for a long time, since 2014. Last it was presented was in Buenos Aires, but it's a pretty straightforward document. It simply associate 2 or more LSPs to provide path protection. So it has a new path protection type, and it has a TLV called Path Protection Association TLV, which can be carried in the association object. And via this, you identify among this group of LSPs, which LSP is working and which LSP is a protection LSP, and what is the mode for the LSP, whether it is on a standby mode or not. So the changes that we did, since the protection is a dynamic association of sorts, it is created automatically. We don't expect operator to configure the association ID and other details. You just configure protection enable. So since this is a dynamic association, all the text around it has been added. Some error handling has been updated, made sure that we are aligned to the stateful PCE, RFC 8231, etc. And the text from security and other manageability consideration section was missing, which has been added. Basically, we feel like this is a quite important document. It's a useful feature. We all need protection, and draft has been stable. And there are, in fact, known implementation for the protection draft. This was, in fact, as I said, the first association type that actually came to the working group, but somehow the diversity and the policy and some other documents moved ahead much earlier than this one. Thank you. Any comments on protection?
So I assume we all agree that having protection is a good idea. Who has read the draft? Draft Anantha Krishnam. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see about 10, maybe a dozen hands, which is a pretty good number. That's encouraging. So with that information, I think we will take it to the list.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Rakesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rakesh Gandhi. I'm presenting this draft on the associated bidirectional LSPs on behalf of the authors listed. So the agenda is we'll look at the requirements and the scope of the document. There are two association or initiation types defined, double-sided and single-sided. We'll look at the PCEF extensions and discuss the next steps. So the bidirectional associated LSPs, they are not new. They have been deployed in the packet transport networks today. They can be co-routed or non-co-routed LSPs. And the properties can be asymmetric in the forward and reverse directions, like bandwidth values. So the scope of the draft is associated bidirectional LSPs, as we mentioned. The LSPs can be initiated by the PCE or PCC, and it can also be used for state-led PCE for co-routed path computation, for example. So the first one, double-sided initiation, where the bidirectional LSP is initiated on both endpoints of the LSP. There is a new association type defined for it. Those LSPs can be co-routed or non-co-routed, as we mentioned. And there was a restriction in the previous version of the association draft where LSPs association cannot be initiated by two different PCCs. So the restriction was removed, and it works perfectly for this use case. For the single-sided initiation case, the tunnel, bidirectional tunnel, is initiated on one endpoint of the LSP, and there is a reverse LSP that's also created as part of the tunnel. So we clarify the tunnel construct in this revision. So as mentioned, it's using association group. There are two new association types defined for single-sided and double-sided bidirectional LSP. The rest of the object is populated using the procedures defined for RSVP association object, RFC 7551. There is a new TLB defined in the association object, operator configure association and range. But as these are operator configure associations, this TLB is not used, so that we can use the entire range of the association ID. So there is an optional association group TLV defined that contains the flags for forward LSP, reverse LSP, and the co-routed paths. There are some rules defined in the RSVP FRR T's working group document to identify forward and reverse LSPs. And the last one, error handling. So as mentioned, the forward and reverse LSPs belong to the same tunnel. And during the PCEP communication, there is an error code defined to identify if there is a tunnel mismatch. So next steps, we welcome your review comments and suggestions, and we're requesting a working group adoption for this document. Any comments, questions?
Okay, so this draft has been discussed for a while. It's been on the agenda a few times. Just to confirm what I think I already know, how many people have read the draft? Okay, it's not as many as I thought. Maybe half a dozen hands. Yeah, 6 people. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and poll and see what sort of response we get. Again, I think my concerns are largely to see that enough people have had eyes and reviewed it.
Yeah.
Maybe a dumb question from me actually, but what is the difference between single-sided and double-sided? What do you mean by that?
So, on single-sided, a tunnel is created on one endpoint, and it contains the both forward and reverse LSPs, and there is a RSVP reverse LSP object is defined.
Oh, it's reverse LSP object.
So it gets a signal across.
That's okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Any more comments for Rakesh? All right. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Himanshu.
Himanshu from Siena. I think I've read the draft, and it's a very interesting draft. We are following this draft pretty closely. So I would recommend adopting this. My opinion.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. It's good information.
Yeah. Thanks, Himanshu.
Okay, the next presenter is Hao Mian.
Hello, this is Hao Mian from Huawei, and I'm going to present this draft extension to PCEP to support the resource sharing based on past computation. So this work has been initiated 3 years ago and was once terminated because some scope and conflict with some other works, especially for the association group works. And by carefully discussion with the authors from other draft, we has aligned our scope and rescope this draft to support only the resource sharing scenario and specify this kind of strategy when the new RSP is used to replace an existing RSP. And we also support another scenario for resource sharing between two RSPs with different parameters, including the endpoints or bandwidth and some similar parameters. In the draft, we include 2 different use cases. So one is for single PCE path computation in the single domain case, and the other is a kind of multiple PCE interactions which can be applied in either interdomain case or interlayer case. And considering the resource sharing strategies, we now provide 3 different consideration. That is, you share the link, or you share the node, or you share the same SRLG group. So now we are working together with the association group draft by using the association group object defined, and we extend this by defining a new TLV to support resource sharing. So, okay, this flowchart is a little bit repeating what Drew draws in his picture, but this one becomes more simple because it is quite clear that the association group object is a base object defined, and we are going to define different TLVs. Compared with the resource sharing, I think the other extreme for path computation is a kind of diversity. So this draft covers how to compute different paths in a diversity ways, but our work focus on how to do it in sharing ways. So we reuse the association group object defined in the first draft, and we are introducing a new association type, which is named as sharing, and we define the corresponding resource sharing TLV in the association type object. So this is a brief view of the TLVs, and currently we include 3 different flags here, and represent for the strategy of sharing. And the L bit is the link, N bit for node, and the S bit for SRLG. So when any of this bit is set to 1, it means during the path computation, the PCE need to prioritize such kind of sharing during the path computation. So it means that it would firstly try to share the link. If there is no link resource can be shared, then it will try to find the path without link share. So this is slightly different from what is fully failure directly. So if they cannot find a path without link share, then it will report failure. It failed again, yeah. And the same procedure rules applies to every flags. And for the node and the SRG bit, the PCE just prioritize different parameters to be shared for the path computation. And such kind of information to be shared is carried in the optional TLVs. So currently we bring this work back after 2 years, and we have already confirmed the relationship for this work and the other existing works. We are trying to make sure that we are doing the right way, and if there is any suggestion to the solutions, we are welcome to receive any comments, and we would also like to request for a working group adoption. Thank you.
I haven't read the draft. This is Himanshu. One of the suggestion would be to have a link diversity instead of share. Link diversity, node diversity, SRLG diversity. Do you have that, or you have in the association diversity?
This one is a separate draft that deal with diversity case.
So, okay, so this for the sharing part. Okay.
So if the officer are asking for adoption, by show of hands, how many in the room have read this draft? This is about 10 or 12 people. Of those 10 or 12, how many people think this is a reasonable starting point for this work and that it should be adopted in the working group? It's about the same. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Drew, if you are back.
Hi, this is Dhruv again, your final presentation. It's on state synchronization between stateful PCE. This document has been discussed in the last two IETF, and so we'll present what is the latest update that we have done, and let's start with that. So basically, what is this document? This document defines the procedure that how two stateful PCE communicate with each other. And this communication, basically, we are doing to make sure that the PCE deployments are resilient, that if one stateful PCE goes away, it doesn't lead to disaster, and there is another PCE which can easily take over. Some of the procedures were already defined in 8231. The idea with this document is to make sure that we become much more resilient and solve some of the issues that we found, like looping, optimality issues, etc., especially in case when the path computation is a dependent path computation, and for example, in case of diversity, where two LSPs who are related to each other, and when we are doing path computation on them, it could lead to some computation loops, etc., which has been discussed in the previous IETF meetings a couple of times. One thing that we worked towards to make sure that we do this in such a way that it can be used in various PCE to PCE relationships, whether we have a redundant PCE where one PCE is a slave and another PCE is the master, and all computation is done by one guy, and only on the failure it moves to the other one, or the two PCs are sharing and they are load balancing between each other within the same domain. The next set is when you are two PCs which are in different domain and you would like to share information, then also the same extensions could be easily used in both peer-to-peer relationship or parent-to-child relationship. So this is a brief intro on the state sync draft. So yes, okay, we are still continuing with introduction. Okay, there's more to introduce. So generic procedure, this is a generic procedure. It works for both the cases. We call this PSEP session a state sync PSEP session, and we have a capability around it so that you can identify on which session we would be exchanging this information. And the synchronization needs to happen from both PCs. So from one PC to another, one PC with his state and another PC with another state. That's why it's bidirectional in nature. And some of these state sync relationship, you can mark that yes, for some set of LSPs, one of the PCs is the master PCE who's going to do all the path computation. And within that association group, for example, if we take the diversity, all the LSPs must be delegated to that master PC who will do the computation, and that will allow and help us not to go into the computational loop and which PC is responsible, etc. And the way to decide this relationship is a simple PC election that can be done based on the priority. We also needed to make sure that how the LSP state needs to move from PCC to PC and maybe from one PC to another. So what are the set of forwarding rules around that? That when PCE should forward this information to another PCE. So those rules are also well defined in the document. And then we have the sub-delegation procedure, which is, as I was talking about, in master and slave. Maybe the PCC delegates the LSP to one PC, but that PC is not the PCE who is supposed to do the path computation. It can further delegate the same LSP to the master PC. So these are the set of procedures which are defined in the document. So coming to the main part, that is what is the update that we have done. So the update was around how do we make sure that the state that is stored in the at the PCE is the latest state. So you might be getting the state from the device, which as for 8231 happens, that the PCC is supposed to provide you the LSP state from the device, as well as another PC might be sending you the state. So we need to make sure that we update the state with the latest information. So we have this procedure laid out for that how we could do that. So the main 2 points are that we need to keep single state and make sure that that state is the latest. We will also maintain from which all sources we have received the state, so that even if one session goes down and if from other session I'm still able to learn about this information, I'll keep it till the information goes from every source, right? So that kind of procedure will help when we have a list of all the sources. So how did we kind of debated what is the best way to do that? One thing that we found that since we already have in the state synchronization optimization procedure something called as the LSPDB version, which we wrote to do some kind of optimization, like when we can skip or when we can do incremental DB sync rather than doing a full sync every time. So if we can use this LSPDB version via which we can always figure it out that which LSP state is the latest state. So, but the value of the LSPDB version is per session. So what we had to do was we created another TLV called original LSPDB version TLV. And the idea of this TLV was to carry the PCC's LSPDB version as it received from the PCC. And you may still have the LSPDB version, which is between PCE to PCE. So via this new original LSPDB version, we could always determine which is the latest state coming from the network. And the PC updates the state. So what is our rule? The PC will update the LSP state only when the DB version present in the current report is greater than what is already stored in the in my database. So this will ensure that we never use the older state. So let's take an example. So suppose you are receiving a state via a PCE as well as PCC. For some reason, this link and this path is quite slow, and the information, though sent by the PCC, this information PCE always received first. So let us take the top example. We report the status, the PCE further forwards the status to another PCE and includes the original LSPDB version, let's assume the version number 100, with this information, and it adds it into the database. Now some other change happens on the same LSP, so you have a new version 01, and while this version is still going, this guy is still quite slow and it has not yet reached. But 101 we simply update, but on the slow link, now imagine we get the older state, which is still not reached the PCE with the version number 100. And since this is an older version to the latest state, we will simply ignore it. So via this procedure, very simple procedure, we could make sure that the latest state is always maintained at the PCE, and there is no reason for us to get, like if we are receiving the same information from multiple places, we'll make sure that we get the latest information only. So that's about the update. So basically what is still pending in the document, we want to explicitly add how to handle initiated LSPs, PC initiated LSPs as well. But technically, there's not much of a difference between a delegated LSP and a PC initiated LSP, because even when you initiate the LSP, it goes to the PCC and PC reports and delegate back to the PCE. So we have already the procedures working for delegation. All we need is to clarify and make sure that it also works for PC initiated. So a small update we need to make, which we are working during this IETF meeting, and we'll try to publish very, very soon this update. Overall, I think this, even in the last IETF when we have discussed this topic, there has been a good support that this is a problem that's worth solving. And we hope that you consider this document as a good foundation for us to work on. Thank you. And I guess Adrian has a question.
Hi, Adrian Farrell. Can you go back to, I think the slide, well, that one will do. Yeah.
This one?
No, the picture, one of the pictures.
Okay.
Is there an assumption that the synchronization is always from a master PCE to a slave PCE and never,
Yes.
so never two masters?
Yes, yes. Those procedures is where we have identified in this set of forwarding rules. So only the PC that's delegated LSP. So PCC would delegate an LSP to a single PC. Only that PC will further move that information to others. So other PCs, for example, in this case, even if this was the latest information, the information would have not gone in that direction. And also the idea was that we want to make sure that it's the master PC where we need the latest information. So even if there is a delay at the other side, yeah, doesn't matter.
Drew, I'm trying to just understand why we want to do this, what the use cases were. I know you had a slide on that, but it didn't quite go into my head. So is the deal here that there are maybe multiple PCEs because we want to provide some sort of redundancy or scaling to the network where just having one point of failure is a bad place to be? Okay.
Yes, in fact, in the 00 version of the document, that was the use case. That is how we can avoid computational loops. But then we kind of agreed that we don't want to write an extension that only works for redundancy, if the extension can easily solve the problem for other cases as well. So even if it is interdomain or hierarchy, we should kind of use the same techniques.
Yeah, because I guess I sort of think of a PCE as being like a virtual device rather than a physical box necessarily. Yes. And when I think about redundancy or load balancing, I tend to think more about a horizontal scaling inside an implementation rather than having multiple different implementations talking to each other using a public protocol. So
I completely agree. I think that model also exists where maybe they are using an internal database and sharing clustering solution, which are kind of popular. But I think we feel like both the things are kind of needed. If a PC is using an internal thing, doesn't care for a standard protocol, yes, they can do within that as well.
Yeah, plus, so I'm trying to judge the need for the standard protocol, like rather than whether it could be done with a standard protocol. I'm trying to get a feel for the need for it. Well, you had some other use cases as well, but I didn't quite understand those so much.
Okay.
The interdomain case, why would two PCs in a different domain share responsibility for the same group of LSPs, for example?
So if you have end-to-end LSPs and imagine you have an end-to-end RSVP LSP and head nodes definitely knows the information, but we also want, if you are cooperating between two set of PCEs to set up an end-to-end LSP, and if there are some resources information in the second LSP, we would like both the PCs to be aware of that information because it's an end-to-end LSP, and any path computation, if only the ingress nodes and the other does not, will not give us the best optimal stateful PCE solution. So if two PCs, when they're cooperating via request messages and other things, and if the ingress PCE learns the latest state, we wanted a good and fast mechanism to also report that information to the next PCE so that the computation goes faster. So you will definitely not do this for all LSPs because there's no reason for you to share that information, only for interdomain LSPs. And similarly in hierarchy PC, that I give it to the child PC wants to further delegate to parent PC, and how to send that report information, how to keep the database synchronized between child PC and parent PC, the same procedure can help.
Okay. I guess I'll go read the use cases in more detail offline, see if I can really get to understand those. So for the question about do we want to take this work on, I think the obvious question is, has anyone read this? If you've read this, please raise your hands. We got two people, so not too many people. So I think it seems like the draft hasn't had a lot of traction, and not many people have read it. So I feel like it would be a good idea to get more people to get involved, show some support or at least interest in solving the problem at the moment. I think I'd be looking to find if there's real interest in working on this problem, or if it's just something we're sort of hypothesizing.
Stefan, would you like to add your experience, like since one of the operators came up to us and said that this is the problem that they are facing? So maybe Stefan can also add the background
Stefan,
there.
Please
sure.
Let us know.
So yeah, Stefanos from Orange speaking. So if we are looking at the current PC implementation, we know that are based on a application-based redundancy. So for example, using database synchronization and so on, they have a lot of constraints. Like for example, you should put all your free instances in the same site, which is clearly not acceptable for us, because if the site is failing, you will not have any PC anymore. So we need to have something that is more robust compared to what this application-based redundancy is providing. So clearly an East-West dialogue using PCAP protocol is something that is really useful and straightforward and simple to implement.
So sorry, so you could have the two PCs in different sites.
Right. So for example, one in the US and the other in Europe or something like that, with a very high RTDB between them.
Okay, the thing with the backend database is you think that that's restricted and you couldn't do that with a single backend database.
In theory, it seems doable, but no one is supporting it.
Yeah.
You have to, usually what vendors say you should be at something like 10 or 15 millisecond max, which is not acceptable for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Drew. And that was the last presentation. So has anyone got anything else they want to talk about? Or no? Okay, so thank you very much, and we will see you again in London. Yeah, thank you. Oh, sure. I'll put you on lower.